Someone right now is getting a private jet repositioned across 3 time zones because they changed their mind about where they want to have dinner tonight. Not tomorrow, tonight. The jet was already in the air. There are people who never wait on hold, who have never sat in a waiting room, who have not dialed a phone number to book anything in over a decade. There are people who have a person whose only job is to know where the best table in any restaurant in any city in the world is, and to have it ready before the request is even made. There are people whose doctor is asleep right now with their phone on, waiting. There are people who have never, not once, experienced the friction of the modern world. And what is stranger still is that none of them think of this as unusual. They are not grateful for it. They do not notice it. It is simply the texture of their life. The system that makes this possible is not what most people imagine. It is not simply money, it is infrastructure, layered, invisible, and running constantly beneath the surface. And once you see how it actually works, the specific mechanisms, the people, the networks, the costs, you cannot look at the world quite the same way again. It starts with the concierge, not the person at the front desk of a hotel, a different kind entirely. There are private concierge firms that exist exclusively to serve ultra-high net worth individuals, some of the most prominent ones you have never heard of. They do not advertise. They do not have websites. You get access through a referral, and not the kind where someone gives you a name, the kind where someone calls on your behalf and vouches for your net worth and your temperament. Membership in the most elite of these services runs between $50,000 and $200,000 per year. That is before any actual service is rendered. That is purely for access to the network. And what the network can do is genuinely difficult to categorize. A bottle of wine that exists in only one cellar in Burgundy, found, purchased, and arranged for transport within the same afternoon. A reservation at a restaurant with a 2-year wait list, made for next Thursday. A specific suite at a hotel that is sold out for a major event, not found on a different floor, not found at a comparable hotel across the street. That suite, that hotel, that night. These firms maintain what are called relationship portfolios, essentially a database of every person who owes them a favor or who values the ongoing business enough to make exceptions. Maitre d's, hotel general managers, auction house specialists, gallery owners, yacht brokers, art handlers, suppliers of things that do not have public prices because they do not have public markets. The concierge does not make calls and hope for the best. They make calls where the outcome is already understood before the phone rings. When a client needs something, the response is measured in minutes. Not because the firm is efficient, because the firm has spent years building a world where the answer is almost always yes, and where the only remaining question is how quickly yes can be delivered. These are not exceptional stories inside these firms. These are Tuesdays. The concierge is only the surface layer. Beneath it is a web of people on permanent standby. Many billionaires retain what is known as a direct care physician. This is a doctor, sometimes a team of doctors, who serves one family, not one practice, one family. They travel with the principal when requested. They are reachable at any hour. They carry access to a private medical network that can deploy diagnostics, specialists, and in some cases, mobile surgical teams to wherever the client is located in the world. In certain arrangements, this physician has a quarterly retainer in the low 6 figures. That is not total compensation. That is the retainer for availability. The implication being that the physician's time, all of it, is first allocated to this family. Other patients exist at the margins. There is a broader private medicine infrastructure built around this. Networks like MDVIP or Solace Health represent the more accessible end of this spectrum. Concierge medicine practices where members pay annual fees for same-day appointments and direct physician access. But above that tier, the arrangement becomes more bespoke, more personal, more absolute. Some of the wealthiest individuals have what amounts to a private health intelligence operation. Blood panels run quarterly, biomarkers tracked longitudinally, genomic data analyzed for risk. The goal is not to treat illness. The goal is to make illness statistically improbable. And it extends beyond medicine. There are nutritionists, performance coaches, sleep specialists, cognitive trainers, all retained not by the appointment but by the relationship, available not when it is convenient for them but when it is needed. There are individuals who sleep in hotel suites that have been pre-inspected for air quality, lighting spectrum, and mattress firmness, adjusted to specifications before arrival, the same way a rider on a concert tour specifies what should be in the dressing room. The body of a billionaire in this world is treated as infrastructure. It is maintained the way a Formula One car is maintained, continuously, preventively, by a dedicated team, and with the understanding that any degradation in performance has consequences measured not in discomfort, but in billions. Private aviation is where the system becomes most visible and most misunderstood. The common assumption is that flying private is about comfort, wider seats, better food, no middle seat. That framing misses the point almost entirely. Flying private is about the elimination of a category of experience, the category called waiting. When a billionaire decides to move, they move. There is no check-in window, no security line, no gate, no terminal. Their vehicle pulls directly onto the tarmac. Wheels are up within minutes of arrival. The aircraft is configured the way they prefer it. Temperature, lighting, food, connectivity, and before they board. Some of the wealthiest individuals do not own one jet. They maintain a fleet, different aircraft for different distances, different configurations for different purposes. A light Citation for quick regional hops, a large cabin Gulfstream G700 for transatlantic, capable of flying New York to Tokyo non-stop, a separate aircraft configured as a flying office with conference seating, satellite internet, and enough range to conduct a full business day at altitude. The operating cost of a large cabin private jet runs between $3 and $5 million annually before a single flight is taken. Hangar fees, crew salaries, maintenance contracts, insurance, then fuel and handling costs on top. A transatlantic flight in a Gulfstream burns roughly 1,500 gallons of fuel each way. But the real leverage in private aviation is not ownership, it is positioning. A jet that is sitting in the wrong city is useless. So the logistics teams that manage these fleets are constantly repositioning aircraft based on projected movement, sometimes before the principal has finalized their plans. There are flight schedulers who work directly for billionaire families whose entire job is anticipation. They are tracking the principal's calendar, monitoring weather patterns across likely routes, coordinating with ground transportation on both ends, and making preliminary crew assignments for trips that have not yet been formally requested. The result is that when a billionaire says on a Wednesday afternoon that they want to be in Geneva by Thursday morning, the machinery has already started because it started Tuesday. There are people alive today who have never, in their adult life, taken a commercial flight, not because they refuse to. The option simply does not exist in their world. It has never been presented to them, and this is still considered normal in this world. The average billionaire does not live in one home, they live in several. Some live in 5 or 6, and each of those properties is fully operational at all times. Not seasonal, not partially staffed, fully operational, as if the owner might arrive tonight. The estate manager is the central nervous system of this operation. They are responsible for ensuring that every property, regardless of when it was last visited, is maintained at a standard of readiness that requires no transition period. The temperature is correct when you arrive. The refrigerator contains exactly what you prefer. The vehicle fleet is fueled, inspected, and current on registration. The linens are freshly changed. The security system has been tested. The pool is at the right temperature. The flowers are not wilting. All of this happens on a schedule, without being asked, because being asked is a failure of the system. There are households where the ratio of staff to residents is greater than 10 to 1, where there is a person whose job is specifically to manage the other staff, where there is a person whose only function is wardrobe, not to shop, but to maintain, catalog, and ensure that the right items travel to the right properties ahead of the owner's arrival. Garments are sent ahead, they arrive pressed, organized, and in the correct seasonal configuration for wherever the principal is going next. There is a dedicated position in some households called a house manager or a major domo, a role that has existed in the households of the wealthy for centuries and has not meaningfully changed. Their function is to ensure that everything the principal needs is present before the need is expressed. The art of this role is the elimination of the request itself. The staff in these environments operate under a culture of invisibility. They are trained to be present without being noticed, to move through rooms without making sound, to solve problems before the problem problem becomes an experience. Former staff from these households often describe a specific disorientation upon leaving. The re-entry into ordinary life, where you must make your own reservations, handle your own logistics, wait in lines, navigate friction, can take months to adjust to. Several have described it as culture shock. There is a word used in these households, seamless. It is the highest compliment. It means that nothing was felt, no friction, no delay, no awareness that a request was made and fulfilled. Only the experience of a world that simply works all the time in every direction. But the most powerful part of this system is not the logistics. It is not the staff or the aircraft or the medical team. It is access. And access at the highest levels of wealth is a different category of thing entirely. There are people in this world who can reach the CEO of almost any major company directly, not through an assistant, not through a referral chain, because they are a significant shareholder or a lead investor, or because they have attended the same private gatherings for long enough that the relationship simply exists. No intermediary, no delay, a direct line answered. There are individuals whose calls are returned by sitting heads of government within the same day, not because they hold political office, because they move enough capital or control enough of a critical industry, but that the conversation is in the national interest. The call gets returned not out of courtesy, out of necessity. This layer of access extends to culture as well. There are collectors who do not attend auctions. They are called before the auction, offered works privately at prices the public will never know, before the work ever reaches a sale room. There are architects, designers, and artists who maintain private lists, clients they will always make time for, regardless of current workload, regardless of how long the public waitlist has grown. These lists are not advertised, they are understood. There are invitation-only forums, some held annually in remote locations, some less frequently, where the admission criteria is not prestige, not accomplishment, not fame. It is a specific level of verified net worth. The attendees do not need to network because they already know each other. What is discussed is not transcribed. It is not leaked. It is not made public. The decisions made in those rooms about capital allocation, about emerging technology, about geopolitical positioning, or filtered down into the world in ways that are visible only in retrospect. You see the outcome. You rarely see the origin. These are not conspiracy theories. These are the natural, logical consequence of concentrating enough wealth in few enough people that the gravity of their decisions bends outcomes. Markets move, policies shift, industries emerge or collapse. And the people inside this system experience none of it as power. They experience it as convenience, as the ordinary texture of a Thursday. What is most striking to anyone who has observed this world closely is not the excess, it is the normalization. The jet repositioned across time zones was not a luxury, it was a logistics problem solved. The doctor who arrived at the hotel room at 2 in the morning was not remarkable. He was doing his job. The table that materialized at the restaurant with no reservation was not a favor. It was a function of the network. None of it registers as extraordinary to the people inside it, because extraordinary is a word that requires a baseline, and their baseline is different from yours. What you experience as exceptional service, the kind you might encounter once a year on a trip you save for, at a hotel that exceeded your expectations, as for these individuals, the floor, the minimum acceptable condition, the thing that happens when nothing has been optimized yet. And this points to something uncomfortable. The gap between these two experiences of the world is not merely financial, it is perceptual. The billionaire and the person reading about billionaires are not just living differently, they are living in different categories of reality. One reality contains waiting, friction, the experience of wanting something and not immediately having it, the small daily accumulation of delays, holds, queues, and closed doors. The other reality has had those things removed. Quietly, systematically, one layer at a time, over years of capital deployment directed not at assets or investments, but at the elimination of inconvenience itself. And what remains once all the friction is gone is a life that moves at the speed of thought, where the distance between wanting and having has been compressed to almost nothing. That is not luxury. That is architecture, and they live inside it now, permanently, in a version of the world that was built specifically around them. The rest of us are living in the version that was built for everyone else.